Hi, I'm Thomas King. I'm going to go over what I call the two airplane model. This model is going to help understand what stress is and how it relates to us and what kind of impact it can have on us. We're going to follow the flight of two airplanes. Both leave at the same point. This is us waking up in the morning, getting ready for everything else that the day might bring. We're going to follow this first airplane as we go. So we have what's called our sympathetic nervous system. As we wake up, our body becomes alert. Okay? As we move through the day, we hit what I like to call stressor number 1. Okay, so now this is a big thing that can activate our sympathetic nervous system. It's an event. It might be small. It might be us getting to work and seeing there's quite a load of files on our desk that we need to now handle for the rest of the day. I start to feel anxiety and a little bit of stress, maybe a little bit of an elevated heart rate or some elevated blood pressure, but no problem. Because we know how to handle that using a coping mechanism and trigger what's called our parasympathetic system. So we're going to get off of our airplane using a parachute to slowly bring us down as we go. Our parasympathetic system is our parachute. However, what happens if we don't trigger that parasympathetic system? We don't use one of those coping mechanisms. Okay, then we see an elevated level of sympathetic system again when stressor number 2 kicks in. So now our boss walks into our cubicle and says, not only do you have a huge file load today, but you didn't do what was necessary yesterday. So what do we end up seeing here? Oh, hey, look, another opportunity for some coping mechanisms. So maybe these coping mechanisms are some breathing techniques that we've learned, okay? Maybe at this point we need to go out for a quiet walk, remove ourselves from the stimulus to allow things to slowly come down. Maybe it's a combination of those two things. As we're going for a walk, we're focusing on our diaphragmatic breathing, okay? With that being said, maybe that doesn't happen. Maybe we don't trigger that parachute, that parasympathetic system, and we end up hitting stressor number 3. So now we're pretty far off of the ground. We're pretty far into that day, maybe even a week. Maybe we've had an opportunity to go to bed and sleep and let things recover. But we missed that because of a crying child. Oh, hey, stressor number 3, crying child. So now, when we get over here and we start to see another inflection point, can we now use another coping mechanism? Can we go to yoga? Go and do a yoga class. Maybe go for a long run to burn off some of that energy, to trigger that parasympathetic system, to allow us to relax and handle that stress. Hopefully we can. But as you can see, our little man is starting to turn red because the time to relax and get that parasympathetic system to trigger is taking longer and longer and longer the more stressors that we face. What happens if we don't hit that though? Well, we hit another stressing point, stressor number 4, and we have another opportunity. At this point, it's probably still manageable. We can probably still control things. We might need to take a day off of work to take some time for ourselves and trigger that parasympathetic system. Take some time to handle things outside of work that are causing the other points of stress. It is going to continue to take a little bit longer, but we can probably still get there in a safe manner by using our parachute, our parasympathetic nervous system. What happens if that doesn't happen? We hit number 5. Now there's no chance of escape. Oh no! And then we hit number 6. Oh no! And then with number 6, the parachute's not working anymore. It's too far from the ground, and so we end up hitting burnout. Let's say we've gone 2-3 weeks without effectively triggering that coping mechanism. We're going to hit burnout. We're going to crash all the way down. This is where we start to maybe get sick. We just start to see some term of long-term disease come in, and we maybe see a disorder coming into play as well. These are bad news. My friend here is not happy. Okay? This is a long-term issue that needs to be dealt with. But it could have been dealt with potentially back here at the beginning if we knew how to handle everything. Okay? If we don't continue to see all these stimulations come up and through. If we're able to effectively manage and use those coping mechanisms, then we'll have an idea of how we can actually handle day-to-day life and stress. Now let's go to airplane number 2. Airplane number 2, you can see that triggering the sympathetic nervous system is quite drastic. It's all of a sudden because of a catastrophe or a life event. Maybe the news of the death of a loved one comes in, and all of a sudden we see that stress level spike. And that's what happens. Airplane number 2 spikes. And it's going to take a really long time for that stress to come down. Okay? A really long time. Sometimes what will happen is maybe we see something really traumatic and we end up getting what's called post-traumatic stress disorder. Yeah, that's a real thing. We see it happen a lot with Army veterans and law enforcement and things like that. Okay? People that are exposed to ongoing situations that are extremely stressful and very traumatic. But this can happen to an everyday person as well. When we get to this point, it's going to be much harder for us to use our coping mechanisms. It may have a little bit of an impact, but we're probably going to continue to relive these situations, relive these catastrophes, relive the phone calls when we found out that our father passed away. So what ends up happening is that we continue at this elevated level and we hit this inflection point where things could get even worse and something worse than burnout could happen that potentially leads to our demise or our death. Or we can seek some professional intervention. Maybe we go and talk to our family doctor who then refers us to a psychologist or psychiatrist. Okay, maybe that professional intervention is some type of therapy, cognitive behavioral therapy, okay, psychodynamic therapy. Or maybe we end up getting put onto some medication to help us manage these things, okay? Maybe that medication brings us to this point, at which point we can start using our natural coping mechanisms to slowly bring us down. But when we're up this high, we're going to need some type of help. Once we get down to this point that we're able to hopefully manage and learn to do things ourselves and use that parachute to slowly bring us down. I hope this helps you understand what stress is and help you understand how we can manage stress. The big thing is that we can actually manage our stress, whether it's through natural means, self-imposed means, things like yoga, breathing exercises, going for long quiet walks or running, these things that allow us to find that rhythm as we breathe. Okay? When we trigger a parasympathetic system, it brings our mind and our body back in line with each other. It's going to allow us to lower our cortisol levels, one of those major stress chemicals. If we don't lower that stress chemical, maybe we end up gaining weight because it forces us to retain weight. It makes it harder for us to lose weight. And then again, that leads to long-term issues if we do get there. If we can't do it in natural means, we'll need to look for help elsewhere. That's okay, no problem. Understanding that this is always available to you is extremely important. This is where something like a crisis hotline might come in play, using our web resources that are definitely available and easily, readily accessed. I hope this helps you understand things. Take care, be safe out there, and take a deep breath.